G'day all you beautiful people, and oh my goodness me, I cannot wait for this. Two things. One, we are talking SuperCoach Draft, and it is going to be a 3-part series. We are going today with the early rounds of your draft. No matter where you are, from pick 1 to pick 12, we're going to tell you who we think should be around the mark, who you should go for, and how you can kick off your draft team in the best way possible. Part 2, we'll be looking at some traps and some draft nuggets. And in part 3, we'll be looking at bench strategies. We'll also be looking for those late nuggets in the draft who will become our league winners. I'm not doing this on my own. I am bringing in my friend. Smithy and I have been mates for nearly a decade now. Can't wait to get him on the show. Can't wait to hear what you guys think. But we are going to be mock drafting the first 2 rounds. So no matter what draft pick you've got, whether you know it yet or not, we're going to give you the guidelines on how to start your team in the right way. Can't wait to get stuck into it. We hope you enjoy it. Stick around for all the parts. We'll drop the Daz Talks Footy draft league code maybe in part 2 or part 3, depending on how the video does. But let's get all that boring stuff out the way. Let's get stuck into it. Looking forward to you meeting Smithy. Looking forward to talking draft. Let's go. Well, call me North Melbourne on Twitter, mate, and you are the Jason Horn-Francis around here, been pumping you up all pre-season. You're here to talk about draft. It's a pleasure to have you on, mate. How are you?
Oh, thanks for that, Daz. It's an absolute privilege to be on the Daz Talks Footy inaugural subscriber, watcher of the content, and you'll see me in the comments every now and again. Obviously, pretty close mates with Daz, so it's nice to be on the channel and having a chat about some draft.
And somewhat more importantly than the friendship, mate, last year's league winner wouldn't have had you on if you didn't have the stripes, mate. You've definitely got it. And we're going to take the people through no matter where they are in their draft, whether they've already done their draft or they're going to come up against us, and we'll reveal the dates and times in part 2 or part 3. Haven't quite decided yet, but we'll get the people involved and maybe how to go about it, maybe targeting those that now that draft is becoming more and more popular aren't that familiar with draft or how to structure their team, mate. We're here to help as per usual.
Yeah, exactly right. We just want to get out some content for the people, and hopefully if anything that we say in this video helps you with your draft and it makes you a better draft player, then we feel like we've done our civic duty.
Absolutely. And if you've seen some of the NFL fantasy, if you follow NFL fantasy on TikTok, people can just say whatever they like with no consequences. So at least you're getting the experts here, mate. Let's talk about the ADP. So for those that aren't aware, that is approximate draft positions. This is where in people's drafts that have already been completed, this is where the players are going. And there is the first round on the screen, mate. And the first thing that leaps off the page for me is why are ruckmen so low, especially since a hell of a lot of leagues run off a 1 ruck structure. Surely those early picks go towards the big men.
Yeah, I usually try and aim for a ruckman round 1. Obviously, this year you've got a pretty clear big 4 in Gawn, Grundy, Darcy, Naitanui. So if I was drafting a first round, I would have them as the first 4 picks because I feel like getting that ruck position right is so important. And there's a lot of midfielders who can average a similar amount, quite a few defenders who can average a similar amount, and same with the forwards. But rucks can really go break. If you've got Grundy with a captain badge on in, going up against someone like a Sam Draper who can be quite inconsistent with his scoring, and you can get a 300 from Captain Grundy against a 50 from Draper, you've won your game in one position. So it's huge.
And I know that more than most, mate. I neglected my ruck in last year's draft, drafted Toby Nankervis, who went really well. And then when it was actually my brother who offered me Dangerfield for Nankervis and a bench player at the time, and Danger was on fire, and then he got injured and did whatever he did. So actually the ruck did cost me last year in the prelim, but we'll move on, mate. So we are going to draft the first 2 rounds, show you wherever you fall in your draft, how we can get you started. That's why it's called building your base. But before we do that, let's talk about the 2 key injuries to top players, mate. Sam Walsh has got the syndesmosis, and Callum Mills is fighting an Achilles injury. For those that have already drafted, this bit may not be as relevant, but for those that haven't drafted, how big of a fall do you see those 2 happening? Walsh would be a walk-up top 8 pick, in my opinion, if he wasn't injured. And Callum Mills, if he's getting past the middle of the second round, he is automatically a steal. How far back do you reckon those guys push it? Because I genuinely believe it is a little bit, because building your team early in the year to get these early wins is ultra important.
Yeah, I think they are going to fall. But depending on how much research you've done and how many late round steals, because there's quite a few midfielders who have a very low average next to their name. And if you're in a league where some people haven't done the research and you can pick up someone like a Macrae for your bench spot or a Patrick Lipinski or a Jarryd Berry, if you can put any of those on the bench, then you can take Sam Walsh in the second round, sit him on your bench for the first 6 weeks, and then you've either got someone who you can trade or you've got good midfield depth. So I think they will fall, but depending on your confidence level and your drafting strategy, you shouldn't be too concerned about taking them early.
Yeah, like if I'm in a 12-man league and, I back my research in, as you know, doing this and also our US sporting podcast, and we're now on YouTube that as well, mate. So we'll do the shameless plug in the middle of the screen there for the Teddies and Three. So go follow that if you like your NFL and your NBA. But I trust my research. So if I'm in a 12-man league, 12-team league, which is what we're going to try and do with the Daz Talks Footy community, if I've got pick 12, I'm happy to back myself in with a Walsh and then with the Snake drafting position, then go for, an auto starter in the second round. So, and if you're wondering, maybe I haven't done my research, stick around for part 2. We're going to tell you how to fill up your league in the middle rounds and how to get an edge. We've got it all here. We're not going to leave people high and dry, but we've got that out of the way, mate. Let's get into the first 2 rounds. So this isn't me and you building a team. I just want to make this perfectly clear. I can already see the comments going, Daz, you've repeated yourself about 4 times. Just making sure. But we are going to be building every team from pick 1 to pick 12, getting you guys started, and why we might be not taking 2 in the same position, dependent on where we are in the draft. I'm going to go through all the odds, mate. You're going to go through the evens. Of course, that'll change when we get to the snake, but Big Dazzling's the host, mate, so he'll take pick 1. And genuinely astonishing how this man's ADP is 8. But if you have pick 1 in your league, please, for the love of God, take Brodie Grundy. Just do it. He's going to be the R1 for the year. I promise you, he's going to, until he gets injured 3 days after this comes out and we're all screwed. But as speaking right now, he is the number 1 ruckman. He's got a chip on his shoulder, had a poorer year last year than he wanted to. Plug him away and then start filling up your midfield in your second and your third rounds. That's where I'm at, mate. Pick 2 is all yours. If someone's got pick 2 in the draft, where do they go first?
I think probably the biggest set and forget midfielder, Jack Steele. Daz has spoken about him on the channel before. He scores in 3 ways, which is so important. He tackles, he kicks goals, and he gets a lot of the ball around the ground. So he is going to be reliable. He hasn't missed games in a long time. He's going to pump out big scores, and he's going to be consistent. So you can't go wrong. Jack Steele at 2.
Don't think so. And if you're at pick 3 and this man is still on the board, you'd be rubbing your hands together. And of course, we don't know what everyone is going to pick. So the guys that are around the mark are the guys that you should be looking at. That's why we give this advice. No, not every league is going to take Jack Steele at 2. But if you've got pick 3 in your league and the Melbourne skipper, Maxi Gawn, is still on the board, just take him. And I can already see the comments. Daz, Luke Jackson. Yeah, I know. Gawn played less ruck time in the prelim, kicked 5 and scored 160 points. The man can kick snags when he goes forward. I know Luke Jackson outscored him in the grand final, but he'll play a kick behind the ball sometimes, which will be reminiscent of some 70s Brownlow medalists, mate, which I've touched on, or he's going to go forward, and I don't really know that many key defenders that can stop him. So as far as I'm concerned, he's still going to be one of the 4 best rucks in the competition. He'll be a plug player. Him and Grundy usually score poorly in round 1 and everyone overreacts. And then he pumps out 160 in round 2 and we're all reminded. So may not be a round 1 captaincy option, but get him in your team, for crying out loud.
Yeah, and I'm going to continue the trend at pick 4. The breakout player of the year last year, in my opinion, and one of my draft rucks, Sean Darcy. He just came from the clouds last year. It was crazy how good he was. Did me very well, led me to a different flag in a different league. So shout out to myself for that. But it was a huge year from him, and he's only going to go upwards this year. So you can't go wrong with him.
If I ever do Daz Talks Footy merch, one of the t-shirts is going to be shout out to myself. That's fantastic. I love that. Okay, so if you've got pick 3 in your draft and 3 or 4 ruckmen are off the table, we talked about set and forget midfielders. We're going to be doing that again. Jackson Macrae is next up. I know there's still a ruckman from the West that we haven't talked about. I know. I still believe there is still going to be good ruck depth in the draft in later rounds. And I'm not talking like the 10th, 11th round. I'm talking more your 3rd, your 4th, your 5th. And we'll talk about them in part 2. But Jackson Macrae can fight off a tag. His inside 50 delivery is the best in the competition, in my opinion. And we've had the argument about him and Bont, mate. The Bont can star. Jackson Macrae is more consistent. He's more draft relevant for mine, even though Bont is a champion. So if you've got pick 5 and Jackson Macrae is still on the board, I will buy some.
Yeah, you can't really go wrong. But you did mention another ruckman out west, and I would be taking him at pick 6. That's Nic Naitanui, arguably the most impactful player per minute in the AFL. And I think he's ready for a career best year this year. I think he's really going to peak. Managed to play every game last year, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it was the first
won the
time in a
best and
long
fairest,
time
yeah.
he played every game. But I think his time on ground is going to be boosted, and I think his output, disposal wise and around the ground wise, is going to be the best we've seen. And we know how good his ruck work is. So the last of the big 4 off the board at pick 6.
And also with Jack Darling's vaccination situation, Oscar Allen is going to have to play as a permanent forward. So you're looking at a Bailey Williams chopping out Nic Nat. I don't mean any disrespect to Bailey Williams, but he's probably not as far along in his ruck career for Nic Nat to take a huge break out of the game ruck duties wise. So might be a bit of a steal at pick 6. Him v Darcy is going to be a fun thing to watch. But if you're sitting there at pick 7, you are absolutely salivating. I actually had pick 7 in our 10-man league last year, mate, and picked him up first. A man who I got on at $41 to win the Brownlow. I was shattered when I didn't cash out, but that is Clayton Oliver. Need I say more? The man, we said at the end of last year, if he can learn how to hit targets, he's a top 5 mid in the competition. Well, guess what? He learned how to hit targets, and he's a top 5 midfielder in the competition. He just needs a better barber. But you know what? When it comes to draft, that doesn't matter. And that's coming from me. Look at
and I was going to say, you're throwing
Oh,
stones in the glass house over there, mate.
Absolutely, yeah, mate. But you've got pick 8. So who are you frothing that you pick up?
Yeah, my prediction to be M1 for the season, actually, slid all the way down to 8. I don't think he's the safest pick, but I think he has the highest ceiling, and that's Tom Mitchell.
Bang.
We know how good of a scorer he is. He averaged 128 post-bye last year, so he was really getting back into that Brownlow year form before he broke his leg. New voice, thing that you don't need to be worried about him in terms of the new coach is he can only play one role.
Yeah.
He is an inside mid extractor, accumulator. That's all he is. You won't see him playing forward. You won't see him move to a half-back flank. You won't see him out the wing. He will play inside midfield whenever he's on the field. So he's going to score big points. We know that. And if you could get him at 8, you're laughing.
And as John Longmire said when he was coaching him in Sydney, if there was only one footy left in Australia, he'd trust Tom Mitchell to go and find it. So, yeah. I said it in my classic team reveal, which you haven't checked that out. That'll be in the description, the link also. But, yeah, he can't play anywhere else. If Hawthorn, because we're both Hawthorn fans, but if we ever put Tom Mitchell on a wing, Sam Mitchell officially will be dropped to the VFL, I think. He's got nowhere else to go, Titch. So, awesome, mate. I like it. Pick 9, and this man's still there. I know he's got a Brownlow medalist coming back into the team. I know Chris Fagan has said that he might have a different kind of role, but how do you not go past Jarryd Lyons? Adelaide fans hate the fact he's not there. Gold Coast fans hate the fact that he's not there. This man's a star, and can we stop the whole he's not a sexy midfielder, so we underrate these blokes? Stop it. He is a premier midfielder in this league. Genuine star. I love him. If you can pick him up as your M1 at pick 9, I think you're laughing.
Yeah, no doubt that he's a good pick, but I think you've overlooked someone who is a better pick, and I'll be taking him at 10, and that's Touk Miller from Gold Coast. Just got announced today, actually, that he will be a co-captain with Jarryd Witts, so congratulations to Touk. That's a fantastic effort. But he went to a different level last year, and there's a bit of a backstory about me and Touk. So in the draft league that I won with Daz last year,
this is extraordinary.
I was strung up on 2 midfielders. was going back and forth between Sam Walsh and Hugh McCluggage, who both had great years. So
They did.
I wasn't too far off the mark, but I ended up getting timed out and it auto-picked me Touk Miller. And I was less than impressed, I'll be honest.
The group chat was lighting up.
I wasn't that happy about it, but he was pretty much the sole reason that I won that league. So massive shout out to him. He's a star, and there is no reason why he can't get better this year.
Well, there's a bloke called Macrae that needs to come in, so I do worry a touch, but you could argue that Jarryd Lyons has got Neil in there. They're a coin flip for mine, maybe a bit of personal bias there, but if you've got pick 9 and Touk and Jarryd Lyons are on there, you're not going to go wrong with either. It's just, two blokes having a chat and we enjoy it. And also, the structure of your league is going to be different. These are just the guys that we like potentially more than others, and you can adopt it into your league as you like. I don't know why I keep trying to justify people disagreeing. I'm on YouTube for crying out loud. Let's get to pick 11. You got pick 11. I feel like after this group of upper echelon midfielders, I'm not saying it's guesswork because your research is still justified, but at some stage, having the best player on a particular part of the ground is so important in this caper. It could be any midfielder, although Macrae and Steele look likely. I don't think there is a safer one spot on the ground than D1. Pick 11, Jake Lloyd, Jake the Snake. There's three things certain in life: death, taxes, and Jake Lloyd playing on from a kick-in, which is just SuperCoach points personified. Had a down year last year if you read SuperCoach content, and he was still the best defender in the league. Pick 11, Jake Lloyd, and you can pick up a great midfielder in just 3 picks away. So I love it. Let's round out the first round, mate, with pick 12.
Yeah, completely agree with what you said in terms of getting the best player in a positional group. And that was my strategy last year in the league that we did, because I took Jake Lloyd at the end of the first round, and he was fantastic for me, and I'd be looking to do the same. So I've got Josh Dunkley as a forward. I think if you can plug him in at F1 and then you can get the turn, which will roll to straight away, so don't mess around with too much time, and get Marcus Bontempelli on the back of that. You've then got who I think will be the best forward for the year, and the Bont, who has the ceiling to be a top 3 SuperCoach midfielder. And if Marcus Bontempelli gets forward status, now you're talking, because you've got who will be 2 of the best forwards in the game. So I think this is a pretty good strategy if you're at the end of the first round. And in our league, I am at the end of the first round again, so I've been stitched up, but it did me well last year. And this is a strategy I'm genuinely looking at: getting a Dunkley or Lloyd with the last pick and then loading into a high upside midfielder on the turn.
Yeah, I like it. And I feel like those mid picks, it's going to be, a massive reach if a Lloyd goes at a 5, a 6, or a 7. If you're a braver person than us, mate, by all means, go for it. I've got pick 5 in our 8-man league. We've got a really small league, which is going to be compact with fantastic teams. He's definitely on my board. And I feel like if the big 4 ruckmen are gone there, I might be going for it. But let's not talk about our league, mate. Let's get into this one. Now, on the return, with Jakey Lloyd, pairing with Jakey Lloyd, I'm going to go to the midfield. The forwards are a bit of a shambles at the moment. So the forwards discussion is genuinely going to be more in the second and third part. So who are we going to tag up with Jake Lloyd? Let's talk about a man who, I'm going to be honest, mate, I was a bit of a doubter when he was younger. And every year that he plays, he keeps giving me the middle finger. I am well and truly a converter. The Essendon Rolls Royce, Zachy Merrett. I know Darcy Parish had a fantastic year last year, but I feel like he's going to be a guy that people are going to reach on. I don't think you can reach with Zach Merrett. Plug him in. He'll score you anywhere between like 100 and 120. He'll either go off his quiet games, he still gets you 95. Lloyd, Merrett, I will buy some.
Yeah, a couple of really good stats to back up picking Merrett here. He hasn't averaged less than 100 since 2015.
Yeah, it's nuts.
And he only had 3 games last year where he didn't reach triple figures. One of those was a 96. So super consistent and super durable. What more could you want in a early second round pick?
And I can't remember the last game he actually missed. I feel like he's played every game since he was drafted, which is extraordinary. So let's go next up, mate. Someone accompanying the new Gold Coast skipper in Touk Miller.
This is where I would take Sam Walsh. and this is why.
Mm.
You've got Touk Miller, who is a big scorer and is durable. So he's your set and forget M1. You won't need to worry about him. Captain option every week. So if you take Walsh here, you can have that risk, take a good bench piece, sit Walsh on the bench, and then when Walsh is healthy, you've got Miller and Walsh, M1, M2. And if you can get a handy forward line, handy defense, you're laughing at this spot. So personally, I'd want to pair Walsh with a set and forget mid if I was going to take him in the second round.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you can have Walsh as your first midfielder chosen. I think you're going to be a bit behind the eight ball. And also, if someone else is going to reach on him, that's okay. You might target him when he comes back. If he has a couple of slow weeks out of the gate when he comes back, he probably won't. He's Sam Walsh after all. But these are all the things that we look for, mate. And trade strategy and stuff like that, we might come together depending on just how the year goes. And we might have a chat about that. But as far as it goes, we're just going to be building the teams. I agree with you. I don't think you can be the first midfielder chosen in your team unless it's really, really, really late in the first round, or maybe that pick 12 if Lloyd and Dunkley are off the board potentially, and you can go Walsh into someone else there. So it doesn't really matter. Let's get into who I'm pairing with Jarryd Lyons, mate. And I had a couple of comments during this man's inclusion in the classic team about how his side are going to play a bit quicker this year and it might affect his disposal. As far as I'm concerned, if someone takes the majority of the kickouts and they don't lose one-on-one contests, I can't see his scoring go down too far. Pair Jarryd Lyons with Tommy Stewart, and I think you are genuinely flying and on your way to a winner.
Yeah, he's probably my D2 at the moment, with the news about a certain Collingwood defender who we'll touch on pretty soon today. Has me a bit sheepish, but yeah, Tom Stewart is, I think he's a pretty safe pick, to be honest.
Yeah, he's a great man as well, and one of the only blokes from Geelong that I think all Hawthorn fans can appreciate and respect as well. So that is a high tag. Let's get to the next pick, mate. Who are you accompanying with Tom Mitchell?
So when we did this, it seemed like a bit of a gag because I've got Titch and Rich, Daniel Rich from the Lions, but I think that Daniel Rich is an awesome option in the second round at your D1 position because he scored brilliantly last year. Grant Birchall is now gone. So he is going to take every kick in. He is going to be the man across that half-back line that they want the ball in his hands. So through sheer volume, I think he's going to average 100. And if you can get that from your D1 paired next to a Tom Mitchell who could average 120 plus, gee, you'd be feeling very good after 2 rounds if that was the case.
Yeah, and even with the news that Dane Zorko is training with the defenders, who are you going to have taking your kickouts? Daniel Rich or Dane Zorko? And I love Dane Zorko as a player, but get the ball in Rich's hands as much as you can. Next up, mate, we're going to be pairing Clayton Oliver, and I'm going to the defense. And I know you want to talk about what the hell is going on at the Holden Centre, but he's the Rory Laird of 2021. Jack Crisp is the DPP. He'll play halfback. He'll play midfield. I know Collingwood are overreacting with their youngsters at the moment, but he's just won the best and fairest. He's arguably their best midfielder now that Pendlebury's gone back, or he definitely is, in my opinion. And sure, is he the greatest ball user in the world? Not really, but meters gain specialist. He's a long kick. Plug him in. Him and Clayton Oliver, that's a fantastic start from a pick that's in the middle of the draft.
I was so high on Jack Crisp. Before
2 weeks ago, you were flying with him.
Before the news came out today where Collingwood announced that pretty much 18 blokes were going to be rolling through the midfield consistently. And it scared me off Jack Crisp a little bit, I'm going to be honest. He's proven he can score off the half-back line, but to be taking him halfway through the second round, oh, man, it's got a risk written all over it. If I can't trust a team to know what they're doing, then I don't want to take that chance. So I'm dropping Jack Crisp slowly down my draft rankings and potentially looking elsewhere in Classic at the moment, just until they play their preseason game.
Okay, so he's dropping down your rankings. Let's say we're in a 12-man league. Where would you be looking at him where you go, all right, I've got to take him? How far down?
I think in the third round. He'd be a third round pick for me. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
If he's still there at the start of the third, that's got Steele written all over it for mine. But we got to pair Nic Nat with someone, mate. The big ruckman from a WA. Who have you got him paired with? I don't know why I said it like that, but there you go.
I like pairing an elite ruck with an M1 option straight away. So I'd be going Ollie Wines. Now, you brought this up pre-show, mate, when we did this, and you said that Brownlow medalists struggle the year after winning the award, Supercoach-wise.
Yeah, definitely do. So averaging under 105 the last 8 Brownlow winners. Now, if that stat is taken into consideration Tom Mitchell's leg, then that's probably blown out of proportion, but it definitely is a lesser production from Brownlow medalists. So I like, if someone wants to reach on him, I like it, but if he's still there back end of the second round, I think you'd be silly not to take him. He's the M1 at Port Adelaide. He could be the M1 in anyone's team.
Yeah, and that was going to be my thing. Port Adelaide, their 3 most used midfielders in the finals last year were Ollie Wines, Trav Boak, who's 34, and Robbie Gray, who's 34. That is not sustainable for a whole season. So Ollie Wines is going to be the constant, and they're going to have people rolling through around him. I think his production is going to be 110 plus. So to pair him with a Nic Nat would be very, very handy.
And if we had known that your man Carl Amon was going to be disrespected on a wing in the All-Australian Stakes, mate, they should have had him in the midfield from the get-go in the finals.
They should have. They should have plugged him in straight away.
Absolutely.
Best kick in the comp.
Yeah, well, there you go. I was going to say 100%, but not to the end bit. I think there are a few ahead of him. Anyway, let's partner Jackson Macrae up with someone. And speaking of blokes that Smithy is thinking, whoa, pump the brakes. No, absolutely not. Aaron Hall with Jackson Macrae in the middle of that draft at pick 5 is extraordinary. How can you be shaking your head? He's tying his shoelaces and getting 7 points. It's unbelievable. I know you were right about Jack Zeeble, and I know Aaron Hall is at a premium price in Classic. He's a premium defender, mate. You got to live with that.
And I said this pre-show as well, and there's some things where you just have a hunch. You don't have any logical explanation behind it. You just have a feeling. And I have a feeling things are going to go wrong with Aaron Hall this year. I don't know why. I don't know if it's going to be injury-related, form-related, role-related. I don't know what it is. But there's just a tiny voice in the back of my head saying, avoid Aaron Hall. So, I mean, if you're getting him at the back end of the second round, top end of the third round, you'd be silly not to. But I won't be one of those people.
I'll tell you what, if Aaron Hall does his knee, your Twitter handle is going straight into the description, and North fans can deal with you appropriately. It's extraordinary. Macrae and Hall, that is a fantastic start. But we need a partner for Sean Darcy, mate, the breakout player of last year, who is going to be his running mate in the first 2 rounds.
Set and forget midfielder, consistent Cam Guthrie. Similar to Ollie Wines, he's got some older players running through the midfield. Joel Selwood, Patrick Dangerfield's going to spend a lot of time forward this year. Mitch Duncan is already struggling with injuries in the preseason. So I just feel like Cam Guthrie is going to be the rock in that Geelong midfield, has proven that he's a consistently high scorer. So I think he's pretty bomb-proof at the back end of the second round.
Yeah, I like it. That aging midfield is a worry, but he is not. Let's get a running partner for Gawn, and we talked about Dunkley and the Bontmate teaming up as teammates. If this bloke's still there at the back end of the second, you'd be silly not to take him. Last year's Norm Smith medalist, Christian Petracca. I don't have the superlatives to describe his grand final performance. I do think someone, especially, you got to know how much research everyone else in your draft is taking. My partner, Sam, who's going to be in our draft, mate, she is a huge Christian Petracca fan, so there's no way he's getting this far in our league. But if you're playing with footy nuts and someone wants to reach on the track, that is okay. There will be amazing midfielders at this point. I do worry about how much forward time he'll play. Now, he did kick 30 goals last year and didn't qualify as a forward in Supercoach. So the DPP stuff doesn't worry me. It is if Melbourne are belting an opponent, do they just rest him? Do they just put him forward? It's one of those cases of Melbourne are going to have a difficult draw, as we know, but will he go to, 80s and 90s against these lesser teams? Because, kind of like Dusty if you're playing GWS and it's 14 degrees and it's freezing, I don't know why I'm disrespecting the Giants here, but let's go with it. And it's a freezing cold day. Melbourne are up by 10 goals at half time. He doesn't need to have a massive production in the back end. So I'm probably cooling my jets. But if I've got pick 22 in the draft and Christian Petracca's on the board, of course you take him.
Yeah, he's also got the target on his head going off that grand final performance. But as you said, you'd be silly to look past him at this stage in the draft.
He definitely would. Now we need a running partner for our man Jack Steele, mate. So take it away with your last pick of this mock draft.
Usually, I don't like taking the same position 2 picks in a row at the start of drafts, but Rory Laird in this spot, and I think you've got 2 very similar midfielders. They're both very consistent. They both play the same role, very in and under, love to tackle, and they're durable. So Rory Laird doesn't miss games. Jack Steele doesn't miss games. Rory Laird tackles. Jack Steele tackles. They both averaged over 110 last year. So, if you put the captaincy on one of these guys, you're looking at, anywhere between 375 and 400 in those 2 players. So it's a huge start.
It is a huge start, and not remember, like, if you're going off our picks exactly as they are, your third round pick in that spot is only 4 picks away, or 3 picks away, sorry, and you've still got the likes of, Jordan Ridley or a Jaden Short to start your defense with, or if you've got faith in one of these premium forwards, which we're running out of, or do you want to take your ruckman, the third string ruckman down, and take a Marshall or an O'Brien or a McInerney or someone like that? You can still get off to a good start, I believe. But let's end this draft, mate, with the end of the second round, and I know that pick 1 was Grundy and taking an injured player. We talked about Sam Walsh not being an M1, but considering Callum Mills is coming back from an Achilles and round 1 seems to be what he's trying for, I think if he's still there at the end of the second round, take him, and then pick 25, you're probably taking a midfielder as well who's still on the board. A Luke Parker type could take the 2 Swannies there. Would be a fantastic choice. You've also got the likes of Andy Brayshaw, Josh Kelly, whoever you like the best out of these guys. I don't think you can go wrong. But starting with Grundy and then 2 midfielders looks like a match made in heaven for me.
Yeah, if you could go Mills 24, Andy Brayshaw 25, I think
Grundy at 1.
Massive tick there. Because if Callum Mills is up and firing by round 4, you've got a star and you've got an absolute steal. So, I love the strategy there.
Yeah, definitely is. All right, mate, that's the first 2 rounds done. So there are the pairings there on your screen, mate. I love them all. There are definitely some that are better than others. I know that it's been quite a common draft thing, especially when SuperCoach Draft first sort of started, to get the middle picks and stockpile what we call the ugly picks, the not so sexy picks in the draft. But it looks like this year, mate, with a lot of ambiguity around injury and COVID and all these things, maybe having either the front end or the back end of the draft might work out well and help you strategize a bit better.
Yeah, well, the back end of the draft did me really well last year. And as I said, I've got it again this year. So I've been preparing to do a lot of mock drafts with the last pick in the round. And I've drafted some incredible teams. So honestly, if you can get the last pick and get the snake, then go for it, because you can get some really good structure out of that last pick.
Yeah, absolutely you can. All right, that's it, guys. Part 1 is in the book. Smithy, it's been an extraordinary debut, mate. If you are out there, you're watching, comment below, let us know who you've got in your draft rankings for the opening 2 rounds that we neglected to mention. Have you got a specific strategy? If you're hoping to join our draft league and don't want to reveal too much of your strategy, I understand. We'll drop the date and the time for all that stuff in part 2 or part 3. But comment below, let us know if you're interested in joining so we know what kind of numbers we can put in the draft. And then, of course, if you can't make the time, please do the considerate thing and just drop out of the draft so we don't have any bots in there. We can make the community happen. Smithy, it's been a pleasure, mate. Can't wait to see you for part 2. But until then, we're going to get out of here.